If you've just started your pattern fitting journey, I know one of the first questions you're going to ask is, what order do I do these adjustments in? I know because I had the same questions, and in today's video, let's talk all about what order is the best order to do sewing pattern alterations, be it for fit or anything, so you can get on and, I guess, make the most out of your pattern altering. Welcome back, my dear sewing friends. It is so lovely to have you here. My name is Evelyn Wood. If you are brand new, welcome. I'm the creator of VintageSewingSchool.com, and here on this channel we talk everything garment sewing, because just like I used to, I bet you are dreaming to sew the clothes that you dream of, and that is what I want for you too. So do hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, because we are on a bit of a roll at the moment about pattern fitting and sewing patterns, because as you know, learning to sew is actually two skills. It's sewing and it's fitting and altering patterns. No one told you, I know, but it is. No one told me when I started either. And that is why I do what I do here, so that it's not so hard for you. So let's talk about what order do you actually do all these alterations in. So if you are actually brand new on your sewing journey and you haven't delved into the adjusting or altering patterns yet, this video might be a little bit much and you might not quite understand the concepts and terms that I'm going to talk about. Leave this for maybe another day when you do start making those pattern alterations and you've got all these questions. This video is definitely for you, because we're talking like, where do you start, what order? Now, I like to differentiate fitting and the pattern altering. So fitting, I class as what you fit when you're literally pinning and tweaking and looking at on your body, on your mannequin, and you're fitting it on. Now that order, I always start from the top and work my way down, because you can't, mess around with your waistline and get all that right, and then all of a sudden you lift the shoulders. Of course, that's lifted your waistline as well. So starting from the top and working the way down in fitting. But pattern altering, that means when you actually come to make those changes that you pinned and tweaked on your like on your toile, your mock-up, making those changes to your pattern pieces. What's the order? It's not the same. Let's break it down. I think we either have easy and hard or more complex alterations, and then we have length and width. And now, first of all, if you are just brand new and you're starting your pattern altering journey, I always recommend that you just do one at a time and literally do one pattern change, make up another mock-up, see what happens, what it does, and then just do one at a time and see what happens before you make more alterations. Because as you're learning, you don't realize that one thing will affect another fit, and it will affect the fit of different areas. So if you go ahead trying to do too much all at once, you don't know what worked, what didn't work, like when you did one thing, what the result kind of was, because you did too many things together. It does seem like a long road, I know, but trust me, it will help cement in your mind what happens when you do something to a pattern. And then as you get better and better, which doesn't take very long at all, you can start combining all of these alterations and doing multiple at the same time, at the same adjusting stage. And obviously, as you get better, you get faster as well. So do one at a time. And the main thing, start with your main alterations and then go tiny tweaks from there. That's the rule of thumb. But let's say we've got, you're beyond that stage and you've got some alterations, right? You already have it pinned, fitted, and everything already. We're not talking about that. We're talking about just the order that we change them on the pattern. So you've got it all pinned, tweaked, and everything. You've got different things that you're all doing. How do we know what order you're going to actually do them on your pattern? And this is where you're at. And of course, that means that your pattern is actually generally your size. We're making the shape adjustments from here. Actually, I've made videos on the difference between pattern size and like fitting, because changing the size is a bit different than fitting and tweaking. We're molding the garment from here. That's what we're focusing on. Of course, disclaimer, there is no one answer for this. And sometimes it doesn't matter which order, but this is just my compressed, generalized view so that it can help you put together your own process. So the first alterations that I usually start with are the length. And so this means length through the chest and shoulders, length through cutting through your waistline and making it longer, length through the bust line, making it longer, length through the hips and the crotch and making that longer, and rough hemlines, making that roughly about the length. Kind of like what I talked about just before, in that starting with the length because you need to get all your horizontal lines sitting right first before you start going in and out. These ones are generally really easy because you're just slashing the pattern and opening it up all the way across. They're pretty easy to do, and then it gives you the basis to do all your other alterations once your lengths and all your horizontal lines like bust line, waistline, hip line, like they're all sitting right, and then you can just go about tweaking and molding from there. So I always generally start with the length alterations first. And just like fitting, with these, within all of these alterations of the lengths, I start at the top, work my way down. That rule of thumb is always a good rule to start with. The second alteration I put as major width alterations. Now, what do I mean by this? I mean, this is where you'll do your FBA, your SBA, full bust adjustment, small bust adjustment, sway back, adding extra or taking away from any seam lines, so your side seams, any width, like major width adjustments, this is it. As we talked, it's a full bust or small bust adjustment. It's major alteration. We're cutting in multiple points and we're opening, expanding the pattern in many different ways and adding a lot of different width. You might be adding or subtracting to the side seams and different seam lengths. So do all these major adjustments now at this point. Maybe your armhole and your sleeve, these are major width adjustments. If you need to change like the width of the sleeve or the armhole, all of these ones I would group together and do as the second sort of alteration. But what about within this group? How do you choose which ones to do in this kind of group? Well, this one's a little bit harder. You need to really look at what adjustment might affect the other one. For example, you kind of need to know your armhole width. Now I know this is sort of a straight armhole, but usually this is more curved and comes out like this, right? You kind of need to know your armhole shape and width before you can start doing your full bust adjustment, because you might actually take it from there. And yes, you can actually do many variations on your bust adjustments like that. If you're looking for those tutorials, that's not what we're going into here today. That's not our topic. All of that I have at vintagesewingschool.com. That's where all they live. I'll put links down below because I'd love to have you in class if you're ready for all that. We're talking about the order of that today in this video. So just really look at what you need on your pattern first before you can do the next one. So do you need the side seam correct before you maybe doing slashes and cuts to your side seam to pivot your pattern? Then obviously you would want to make that alteration first and then do the slash and alter it through there. You can do it either way, and often it doesn't matter which order through here, but that's the way to look at it. Just look at which one affects the other. And it is a really good idea with these major width ones to do one at a time and see what happens, because one thing does affect another. And there is no way to tell that. It just comes by learning and experience. And I promise over time you will learn, just like I did, just by trial and error, and you'll get to know what does affect one another. But I do understand that that seems like a really, really silly thing to say at first, because that's what I used to think too. Okay, so now all your major width additions and subtractions are done. That third group of alterations that I would usually do are the tiny tweaks. So the molding, the sculpting, the gaping. So these types of things are what I focus on next. Generally, basically, because you've got it all to the right size and all those major things are done. For example, your full bust is there. Now you can focus on the gaping neckline or the gaping armhole, for example, and just doing all these tiny little tweaks around to really shape and mold from there. Maybe it is adding then tweaking your waist darts and that sort of thing. All of this is what I class and do as the third group. And again, if one affects the other, but there's usually in this point no real order to these because they're all separate areas, and at this point shouldn't affect so much the fit of the others. So don't worry too much about the order of your alterations within the third group at this stage. So learning to fit is such a process. I know, because it took me a very long time, of course, as well, and it just is the process of learning to fit, but it is a fun journey. Think about the order of doing these things, as in, sometimes it doesn't really matter as much as you think it might. Let's give an example here. If you're learning to paint and you're learning to make a color, right? So if you mix blue and red to purple, you want to make purple, and we're mixing blue and red. Do you start with blue or do you start with red? Well, to begin with, it probably doesn't really matter, right? Because you just don't really quite know what you're doing and you just need to make purple. Because once you make purple a couple of times, you start to notice the different shades of purple. And that's when you can start saying in your mind, it'll make sense to, do I start with blue and add red, or do I start with red and add blue? It's just like the alterations. Over time, as you do them, you'll just start to notice more things, and it will make more sense as to which to do first and what to do next, and what one thing affects another thing. Like I talked about, it just comes with learning, just like the paint analogy. And there is only one way to learn, and that is to just get in there and just make purple. So yes, you will accidentally make other colors by mistake, and that means yes, you will make pattern fitting errors. We all do. Do not worry about that, because there is no wrong. It's the only way that you'll learn how to fit and how to get better. I know it was true for me, it's true for my students of Vintage Sewing School, and I'm pretty sure you already know too that that is true for you as well. So I do not want to let something silly like the order of alterations stall you. Just know there is no real wrong answer. So don't let that stop you on your pattern fitting journey. I'm really excited for you to start constructing your order. I would love to hear actually down below in the comments, what is your main order? Do you follow a similar type of process, or have you found out something else that works for you? What's your biggest takeaway? Let us know down below, because I love reading them and getting your ideas, and I know everybody else loves reading your comments too, to also get ideas so we can all get better at sewing our own clothes. After all, that's all what we're here for. Okay, until next time, my sewing friends, happy sewing. Bye.